Welcome to the Open University's Open Up Your Learning podcast series. In this series, we talk to experts around the university to shine a light on different ways the OU can help organisations widen access to learning and deliver flexible education that is shaped around both the employer and the learner. Welcome to this Open University podcast on access modules. My name's Martin Couzins and I'm a corporate learning journalist. And today I'm joined by a panel of experts from the Open University to discuss how these modules can help ignite an interest in learning for employees that can lead them on to higher level qualifications. We'll be looking at how the modules work and why employers should consider them as a part of their learning offering. Let's start by meeting our panel.
Hello, I'm Simon Tyndall. I work in our commercial division and I head up our new business engagement with B2B businesses.
Hi everybody, my name's John Butcher and I'm a professor at the Open University and I'm director of the Access Programme.
Hi everyone, I'm George Curry and I'm a senior manager working on the Access modules.
Thank you. So our first question goes to John. John, what are Open University Access modules and who are they for and why were they developed?
Well, we have a suite of 3 access modules which are designed to prepare students who are thinking about embarking on advanced level study. They are part-time, they are studied through distance education methods, so you don't have to go anywhere other than your own home or your own workplace. There are no entry requirements and they've been deliberately designed for adult learners, perhaps people who've been out of education for a while, or people who perhaps are not having a great deal of confidence in their own abilities to return to learning. Certainly, they are well established now, and the key is, I think, that learners can engage with the modules, develop their confidence, develop their study skills, all embedded in some content that they may well enjoy.
Simon, can I just bring you in on why these modules are important and interesting for employers, and why now? Why should they be thinking about this type of approach?
So I think they're important because they provide, along with other programs that we've talked about in the podcast, they provide a very flexible route between moving from informal free training towards more formal structured accredited training and education. And particularly what's interesting about the access modules is that they are very much geared towards unconfident learners and those learners or employees for a company that may not have fulfilled their previous education experience and yet have huge amounts of potential. And so for the employer, they're an excellent way of providing a route for their employees to gain new skills, to upskill, to be able to fulfill their potential, and ultimately that results in higher productivity and benefits for the employer. Where they become increasingly important at this, current situation is we know there's huge pressure on organizations to upskill and reskill. And so access modules really provide a very low cost, low risk, and highly flexible route to move people into a structured education program.
Great. So George, when were access modules launched?
So they were launched for the first time towards the end of 2013. About 4,000 students, just over 4,000 students study with us annually on our access modules. There are 2 times of the year that they can start. We start our modules in October and in February. About 2/3 of our students actually study for free. If you are on a relatively low income and you don't have any experience of university study before, you can apply for financial support and study completely free.
And how do the modules set up the learner for higher level study?
Well, I think it does that in 3 ways, really. Almost the most important thing is that it provides the student with a level of confidence and resilience that they can take forward into the rest of their university study. our students are a very diverse bunch, but the thing that they share in common is that they are all lacking in confidence. They don't really understand what it means to be a university student, and these modules provide them an opportunity to develop study skills that are really, really important. It allows them an opportunity to really kind of understand the subject that they're studying, the basics of the subject that they're studying in, and indeed where that subject sits in the sort of broad framework of knowledge that exists. So really it's about skills development. It's about building relationships with their tutor and with other students. It's about learning how to learn online, which is really very important for this sort of distance learning. But the most important element is confidence and resilience, and a sense that university study is achievable for them.
Great. So, John, what kind of student typically studies an Access module?
We have currently a very wide range of students actually studying the Access modules, but I think to offer a kind of standard conventional picture, it would be someone who perhaps didn't particularly achieve as well as they might have at school. They perhaps might not have enjoyed their schooling particularly well. They've then had a gap where perhaps they've been working or raising a family or whatever, and are starting to think about building up their skills and wondering if they could do some higher levels of education. And what we find is, because we offer the modules are what we would call cross-disciplinary, so students will be introduced to half a dozen subjects within each of the modules, so either a spread across the arts and languages or a spread across the kind of social sciences and more professional areas, or a spread across the kind of maths, science and engineering areas. Students don't have to specialise too early, so they can explore what they really like on the modules. And because we have a quite distinctive tutor support system, so students will receive support from a tutor on a one-to-one basis by telephone. And our scholarship suggests that really does enable people to build up trust in the education system again, and they get lots of feedback from that tutor, which really helps them when they come to do their pieces of assessment and their assignments. So, as colleagues have said, it definitely is aimed at people who just need a little bit more confidence before embarking on higher level study. And I think as well, there's that sense of perhaps people thinking, I'm not quite sure I've got the studentship skills to succeed in education. This will definitely provide confidence in those studentship skills.
And John, from your own research and insights, how does an Access module benefit a learner?
Well, we've certainly seen some just delightful feedback from students who've signed up for the Access module, perhaps thinking that they didn't know they could ever do this level of study, really. And they've surprised themselves, and they always praise their tutors hugely for the support they've given, because obviously with taking your first steps in higher education, when you're working as well, lots of things can go wrong, lots of things can get in the way of your studies. And we find having a very flexible program and tutors who are used to working with adult learners really means that kind of confidence can be built up. And I think there's a sense as well in which students are able then, if they do choose to go on to higher level study, to make a much more informed judgment about what they want to study. And one of the key reasons for people failing in higher level study is choosing the wrong subject. So that's very, very important. And secondly, we find the Access modules give students a real sense of studying strategically. So in other words, when they go on to higher level study, even if they hit barriers or things go wrong a little bit in their lives, they know how to prioritise certain things, and they know that they can ring up their tutor. They've got the confidence to do that, to enable them to navigate their way through. So our Access students are much more likely to persist and be retained and to succeed in their subsequent studies.
Great. So George and John, I've got a question for you about how these modules can help engage hard to reach employees and learners. So how can they do that?
Well, they don't make very many assumptions about what the student might know before coming to us. The Open University is a wonderful, wonderful institution. It's open entry. There are no entry qualifications. But actually, individuals that have been out of study for a long time, who perhaps don't have anyone in their family who's ever been to university, so they don't really understand how it works, what the rules are, we don't expect anything from them, and we offer them preparation. So even in an open entry context, there's still preparation that can be done, and that's what Access is for. So we take them through what it is to be an independent adult learner of distance education, the skills that you need in terms of independent learning. You've got to be a bit more of a self-starter than you would have been when you were sat in a classroom at school, for example, which might have been the last experience that many of our students have had. So it really doesn't take anything for granted, except that our students are enthusiastic and willing to learn. So I think that's incredibly important. I think the other thing that's worth noting is that the vast proportion of our students come from, they have low socioeconomic status, they have low previous educational qualifications, so they're less likely to have been very experienced in education before. And as John mentioned, when those students go on to study at level 1, they do better. We know that they do better at level 1 from their experience on Access.
And I think, if I may, that one of the reasons the students succeed as a result of doing the Access module is the way the material has been structured. So students are really given a very, very clear pathway through the module material. The language in which the material is written and the assessment tasks are written has been very carefully constructed, so it's clear, it's not pretentious, it's not full of academic jargon, and I think students respond to that. And I think the other thing I would say is we know from our research that adult learners, employees, do not lack aspiration about going on to further study, but what they often lack is inspiration. So they often a kind of inspirational role model, a colleague at work, someone to show a little bit of faith in them, can be very important. And so I think this kind of idea of working with employees is a very, very powerful one.
John, businesses are realising the importance of online learning. So how do Access modules play a part in that?
Well, we've thought very carefully about this because a lot of the academic literature suggests that adult learners are very nervous about studying online. So what we've done is we divide our modules into 3 blocks. The opening block is a very lovely print material that students follow and students enjoy. And embedded within that material is a kind of bridge to learning online, and tutors work with students to, as it were, hold their hand to become online learners. And for blocks 2 and 3, everything is delivered online, and students are really supported to learn how to use their computer for learning, how to take notes online, how to evaluate online sources, the kind of skills that I think employers might find quite useful in their employees.
So Simon, can I just bring you back in just to look at how employers can use these modules as a part of their learning offering?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the key things is really building on the previous comments, is that too often training programs where you have an employer that's putting out training opportunities are really just taken up by confident employees who are already confident learners. And that's good. But equally, there's the beauty of the Access courses is it allows a wider scope, or it allows a wider opportunity for those employees that aren't necessarily going to take up, may lack confidence, may do not see their own potential, and yet have huge capabilities there. And so it allows employers to encourage smaller, easier step for those people that are unconfident employees.
Mm-hmm. So the modules provide an opportunity to set employees up for success as learners. So is this something, Simon, that has been overlooked by employers, especially now in this current push to reskill and upskill?
I think it has, and I think the current situation has just accelerated that need. But certainly there is a need you want to raise all employees' capabilities up, all employees' training up, not just those most capable or most able, to take advantage of those types of opportunities. And so when we have introduced access programs and other flexible routes in to studying with the Open University, employees, once they're aware of that, have strongly adopted those programs and included it into their general offering of corporate training and education support.
So do we assume then that people will be confident to learn? That's a question to you all.
I think we can assume they won't be confident about how to learn. And I think that's one of the things that the Access modules really help with. For example, I think it's very, very powerful for employees that one of the a series of the assessment tasks on the Access modules are about reflection, are about people reflecting upon their own learning journeys and perhaps what they aspire to do in the future. And they will get feedback on those reflections from their tutors. And I think that really helps them meet what we would call their learning goals. And I think it helps students really navigate quite a personalised path then through their first step into higher education.
And often what they realise during the reflection is that a lot of the skills that they already have are really, really useful in the context of learning. They just hadn't really thought about it that way. So they may be used to organising their time. They may be used to finding reasons to do something, which in an academic context is, reason, argument, evaluation, the sorts of things that you do in everyday life, but thinking about those in a learning context. So it's not even that these students don't know how to do these skills. They've just never thought about them in the context of learning. So we give them the opportunity to really think about what it is they bring to the table themselves too.
And Simon, do you think that's something that employers have a challenge with, just assuming that people will be confident about learning?
I think there's often an assumption that people will do it, or rather that employers recognise that some people are unconfident, but then aren't necessarily recognising that they still have the aspiration to go and learn. The benefit of this type of program from an employer point of view is we know already that when, it's not just about offering a salary and everything. This is a way of enhancing the benefits that you're offering to certain employees. And it's a way of building huge loyalty and retention within your workforce, particularly if you've challenged that employee somewhat to take a step that they previously didn't necessarily feel they were capable of doing. And that's the real beauty. We recognize, or employers increasingly know, that it's not just a question of trying to hire skills in, but actually how do you continue to build those skill sets within all employees at all levels of your organization.
So Simon, where do these modules fit in with the range of OU programs and courses that are available to employers?
So there's a huge range of opportunities from within the Open University, and that starts right down at our free open educational resources that people can access, both employees individually, but employers can use as part of training programs that are free to use to all. Then there's, at the higher end, there's more formal structured education in terms of formal degrees and postgraduate programs that go beyond that. And then in the beauty is of programs like Access modules is they act as a kind of a mini foundation course to actually prepare people or to give them a bridge to move between informal education to more formal structured programs.
That brings us to the end of this discussion on the OU's Access modules. I'd like to thank our panel, George Curry, John Butcher and Simon Tyndall.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
And finally, Simon, where can employers find out more about the Access modules and talk about working with the OU?
Okay, so rather than read out a very long website with numerous links, the easiest way is to either go to our main website, open.ac.uk, and just search for Access courses. Or indeed, if you want something a little bit even more basic than that, go to a standard Google page, type in Access Courses Open University, and it will lead straight to the main landing page for these programs.
Thank you for listening. To find out more about how the OU works with businesses, go to open.ac.uk/business.